皆さんこんにちは. Hello, I'm Taku from Tokyo. Welcome to my video. Today, I'd like to talk about do Japanese speak English? Recently, Japanese currency gets weak and everything in Japan seems cheap. And you may think it is time to have trip to Japan to go shopping. However, you might wonder whether Japanese people speak English, and if you are in any trouble in Japan, you also wonder if English is a useful tool or not. In this video, I cover the following matters. Do Japanese speak English? Why do Japanese not speak English? Could you do a trip to Japan by speaking English only? After watching it, I hope you will understand overall if Japanese speak English or not, and when you come to Japan for a trip, you can fully prepare for that. Before moving on to the explanation, let me introduce myself. I'm Taku from Tokyo, Japan, and I was born and raised here, and I used English in my job for about 10 years. Move on to the topic. First, do Japanese speak English? According to a survey in 2016 done by Rakuten, a famous Japanese e-commerce company, the person who was confident to speak English was only 8.7%. 1,000 people were surveyed at that time. It means that less than 10% of Japanese were good at English. Furthermore, compared with other Asian countries, there are fewer people who speak English in Japan. Average score of TOEFL, test of English as a foreign language, is one of the lowest in all Asian countries. Japanese average score is 71 out of 120, whereas all Asian countries average is 81 out of 120. Therefore, less than 10% of Japanese speaks English, and we could say this is one of the worst in all Asian countries. Second, why do Japanese not speak English? Comparing to other Asian countries, you might wonder why Japanese people don't speak English, and there are several reasons. A. English ability is not much required when finding a job in Japan. It could be one of the most important reasons that English ability is not much required when job hunting, and still there are a lot of lucrative jobs available in Japan because Japanese internal market is very large and there are a lot of domestic businesses among Japanese people. Of course, some companies require workers to have a certain ability of English, such as manufacturing, trading, logistics companies, or any foreign-based companies. But most Japanese companies rather check the candidate's growth potential and communication skills when hiring new workers. B. Japanese students can learn higher education without English. In Japan, students can study at university or postgraduate by Japanese language only. So they don't need to continue studying English after entering a university. English is one of the important subjects for exam to enter a university, or so high school students desperately study English for the tests, and after passing the exam, they usually forget the skill because almost all the lectures at the universities are done by Japanese language. C. Japanese school focus on input of English only. There is a curriculum of English in Japanese junior high schools and high schools in Japan. However, grammar and reading are mainly focused, and listening, writing, and speaking are less prioritized. This is because the entrance exams for universities mainly have the subject of grammar and reading, so most students only study grammar and reading. Recently, listening, writing, and speaking has been measured in some university entrance exam gradually. Uh, as a result, most Japanese who studied English in higher education cannot still speak English. When the first English subject was introduced in schools in Japan more than 100 years ago, reading ability was only focused because in Edo period, the government at that time had a policy of national isolation for the whole Edo period. It lasted about 268 years, and the next Meiji government, around 100 years ago, suddenly need to accept a lot of Western technology and civilization, and students needed to read many imported books to study those. Therefore, traditionally, English reading skill was only focused in higher education. The old way of English education was still continued till today in Japan, unfortunately. Third, could you do a trip to Japan by speaking English only? After hearing it, you now know that less than 10% of Japanese speak English, and you might be worried if you could do a trip to Japan by speaking English. The answer is that you would not be any trouble even if you only speak English. If you go to big cities, if you go to Tokyo, Osaka, Kyoto, or any places where many tourists go, you can find there are a lot of many English descriptions, and you usually don't get confused about many things. For example, which transportation, train, metro, bullet train, bus to use. If you need to ask something to a Japanese person in English, if you are in trouble and need to ask something to a Japanese person in English, please keep in mind the following things. Ask high school or university students. High school or university students rather understand simple English because they currently learn it, and they could possibly understand some English sentences. Choose easy words and speak slowly. If you try to communicate with Japanese person in English, please choose easy words and speak slowly. If you speak quickly as you do to your friends or family, Japanese people feel scared and possibly give up listening to what you say. Write your request and show them. Japanese people are not good at English verbal communication, but good at reading it, so you may show English descriptions through paper or smartphone to them to tell your request. Conclusion. In this video, I introduced whether Japanese people speak English, and you now understand the situation in Japan. Hopefully, you will enjoy a trip in Japan even if there is a little barrier of language. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time.